Well, you took the leadership in what became known as Landrum-Griffin, and in the process of that, you had quite a bit of opportunity to have interchange with Jack Kennedy, future President Kennedy, and also I would imagine that you did have some concerns about what Landrum-Griffin would do to or for you politically. Could you comment on both of those things?
Well, first of all, the House was sort of reacted to the McClellan hearings before the Senate did, and got a bill together, sponsored by Alabama Congressman Elliott. And it was, in the opinion of some of us, too weak and too nothing. It looked, you know, it had nice titles to it, but it wouldn't do anything. I was a member of a subcommittee that was chaired by Phil Landrum of Georgia. And although he was a Democrat, he and I seemed to agree on a lot of things. And somehow or other, also consulting with the Eisenhower administration, Jim Mitchell was the Secretary of Labor at that time, as I recall, we began to think about what are we going to do. We can vote against the Elliott bill, but it's going to become the House bill if we don't do anything about it. Anyway, a movement developed, and with the support of the administration and help of the administration, we developed a substitute for the Elliott bill, which became known as the Landrum-Griffin bill. It provided for secret ballot elections of union officers. It provided that funding, the financing of unions had to be accounted for by filing annual reports with the Secretary of Labor. It provided a Bill of Rights eventually for the union members. It made a couple of important but controversial changes in the Taft-Hartley law to tighten up the secondary boycott provisions and the blackmail picketing provisions. To make a long story short, it came down to a very, very close vote in the House of Representatives. We didn't get our bill out of the committee. The Elliott bill was reported to the floor. And so we offered our bill on the House floor, and it was under debate. And something really historic happened that isn't necessarily reported as history very much. But President Eisenhower made the decision to go on television. He asked for network time and got it. Today, I don't think networks would give a president free time to go and lobby for a bill or an amendment. Maybe they would, but I doubt it. But this was the first effort on his part of any kind like that. He took about 10 minutes on national TV, about 7:30 in the evening, and made the case for the Landrum-Griffin bill. And if you want to, you know, if you're for this bill,
right, you call your congressman.
And the flood came in. We did pass it in the House, and the momentum kept going to the point where, well, the Senate did pass a different bill. We had to have a conference. Jack Kennedy was the chairman of the Senate conferees. And although I wasn't a chairman of the House conferees, being a sponsor of the bill that passed, of course I was very much involved and dealt directly with Jack Kennedy a lot in working out the final details of a bill that later became known as the Landrum-Griffin bill.
Did Kennedy have a genuine interest in the subject matter, and did he have any impact in the final legislative product?
Of course, you know, his constituency was much more labor or union oriented, and he was very conscious and worked for some of the amendments that the labor union people wanted. And we had some real battles, but and generally it obviously came out looking a lot more like the House bill than the Senate version, or it wouldn't have been called the Landrum-Griffin bill.
Did organized labor put pressure on you in the aftermath of Landrum-Griffin? And if so, how?
Well, I don't know that I recall anything too specific, but yes, there was a lot of pressure in the union trade papers and so forth. You know, I was a demon, a devil of some kind or other. Yes. Even though the final version of the Landrum-Griffin bill was passed in the Senate with the votes of Jack Kennedy and Phil Hart and McNamara and others. In fact, I'm going to jump ahead of this and say, you know, later on when I ran for the Senate against Soapy Williams, we had a debate at the Economic Club in Detroit.
And this, I believe, turned out to be a turning point in that campaign. But go ahead.
Well, somehow or other, I had to go first, and so while I didn't spend all my time talking about the Landrum-Griffin bill, I had to defend myself, and the latter part of my presentation was about that. And I ended up with a question to Soapy. If you had been in the Senate at that time, would you have voted with Phil Hart and Jack Kennedy?
Very well put.
Or would you have supported Jimmy Hoffa against the bill? And yet, to his credit, Soapy got up and said he would have voted for it.
Yes. And that demolished that as an issue.
That took the issue away.
Yes. And that was indeed a turning point
for a lot of people.
in that campaign.
Yeah, right.
In 1961, you briefly considered a run for the governorship of Michigan.
Well, it was very brief, and I don't think it was too serious either, to tell you the truth, but there was a little bit of talk about it. I didn't take it too seriously.
In 1962, you and some other young Republican congressmen encouraged Jerry Ford to seek a key leadership position, and that eventually led him on the road that led to his presidency. What do you recall about that?
Well, the effort in '62, when he became conference chairman for the Republicans, did give him a step up and make him put him in the leadership, although not in the top position. But after the '64 election, when Goldwater was trounced so badly by Lyndon Johnson, there was a great deal of discouragement and a lot of effort on the part of younger members of the Congress to try to do something about our leadership. And Charlie Halleck, a very likable fellow from Indiana, just did a great job in lots of ways, but was getting along in years a little bit. The Evan Charlie show, as it was known in those days, the joint press conference every week, got to be a little old hat. Wasn't really doing well.
Wasn't conveying a positive, progressive Republican
And then
image.
there were rumors that Charlie was into the sauce a little bit too much and things of that kind. And so a couple of us, Charlie Goodell of New York and I particularly, sat down one day at lunch and got serious about, well, what are we going to do? And we decided that we were going to try to put up a candidate against Charlie Halleck. It was between Mel Laird of Wisconsin and Jerry Ford. There was a group including Don Rumsfeld and Al Quee and others, and we finally decided that Jerry was the best candidate. We practically drafted him because at first he didn't want to do it. But we did draft him and put on a campaign, and he won. And yes, I think that was a big stepping stone to his ultimately becoming President of the United States.
In 1964, you considered running for the United States Senate, but as it turned out, you wisely did not. But then in 1965, you began to look at Pat McNamara's Senate seat.
Well, it's true. I think that I sort of feel like in my career there have been built-in term limits.
Yes.
After I got to the 10-year point, I was restless and I was interested in the Senate. And I began exploring it, checking with people in various parts of the state. And there was a good deal of press speculation about it. So in the period prior to May, I don't remember now exactly what month it was, but I actually came to the point where I announced that I would be a candidate.
I think it was in February of 1966.
All right. Your research is very good.